And that's what strong branding does. It doesn't just attract the kind of clients that you do want, but it repels the kind of clients that you don't want. So the people that want to pay you the most money and are willing to pay you the most money, more often than not, are the ones that, really value your input. Once I had that realization that there were so many people making music, then I was able to be picky about the kinds of people that I wanted to work with. You not only need to understand who your ideal clients are, but also what your ideal perception of you is.
Today's guest is back for round 2. Carl Bahner is a mixer, producer, and brand strategist based out of Pennsylvania. He was last on the show back in episode 57. We got into his background and his full story there, so if you like this, definitely jump back and check that out. But for Carl's return, we figured let's do a special episode all about branding and client acquisition for audio pros. So welcome back to the show, Carl Bahner. What's up, man? How are you?
I am sleep deprived and over-caffeinated, awaiting the arrival of our second child any day now.
Any minute.
That's how, yeah. Literally.
We're doing this podcast in the danger zone here. Hopefully we finish.
I wasn't sure if this was going to happen or not. This was in our calendar in the lightest pencil shade possible, but I'm here.
Yes, you are. So let's get into it. I want to say that we're here to help people and talk about branding and getting clients and whatnot. But we're also celebrating the fact that your course that you've been working on for years is finally live, called Communicating the Care.
Finally. Yes. Communicating the Care. Finally.
Yes.
It's been so long.
And in case you didn't know, that was your biggest goal from the last time you were on this podcast. You said you wanted to finish your video course. So props on that.
I didn't specify at what speed I would finish it. But, I mean, no, I'll say this. Did it take me 2 years to get it together? Yes. Could I have done it any faster? I don't think so, if I'm honest. Knowing that a lot of what I wanted to do was to disprove my own observations and experiences.
Yeah.
I really wanted to test it instead of falling into the alluring trap of just making a course about things that I think, and who cares if it's actually based on reality? I didn't want to do that.
Yeah. Well, it is based on reality. So I was going to say, let's make this, like, we'll call it our YouTube hook moment. Tell people who this conversation is for and why your opinion matters. And yeah.
Okay. Well, I would say the course and this conversation is directed towards passionate studio professionals like yourself who want to be able to become irresistible to their ideal clients, and not just attracting better clients and not just attracting more clients, but finding more joy in the client relationships that they build. And the course teaches, or what I try to teach in the course is how to communicate your unique tastes, experiences, and perspectives to attract the kinds of clients that are going to find the most value in not just what it is that you do, but the decisions behind why you do it the way you do it.
Amazing. It's very, very well put. Have you been possibly doing a lot of rehearsal for launching this thing?
No, actually, I have been hearing I've been editing it and seeing myself flub those kind of lines a bunch. But I did spend some time trying to get my elevator pitch pretty good, and I still ad-lib it a bit every time.
You have to. Got to keep it real. Yeah. Got to keep it real. Well, I had an idea that I think could be fun, and I think I'm tough enough to take the punches in a public forum. But I figure maybe a good way to kind of go through this process for engineers and producers is to break down my brand and what maybe I'm doing right and wrong. If you're up to potentially embarrass me on my own podcast, I think I can handle it.
I'll say this. I have no goals of embarrassing you.
But you're going to?
Oh, no. I mean, embarrassment is in the eye of the beholder. I'll say I I'm sure I will find some things that I would present to you as things to potentially consider tweaking, but I am not the kind of person in general that's going to look for problems and just call you out on shit. And then I can say shit, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I'm not going to just like find something wrong with it and just like be a troll and make fun of it and then walk away. You know, like I want to say like, okay, I see what you were going for. I understand why you chose to do this or say this, but I feel like based on the context of what I know about you and your goals and your ideal clients, maybe here's a different approach you could take. Here's a different perspective that you could take as you are making these tweaks. You know, I don't want to be a jerk. Unless you deserve it. If you really deserve it, I'll be a jerk, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, I guess we'll find out. Before we kind of get into just having a conversation about all that, are there any concepts or ideas that you think we should discuss beforehand? Any ideas you want to lay out there to help people with some background?
Oh man. Well, let's talk about, we're talking about branding, right? So there's a great branding expert, author, speaker named Marty Neumeier, who has written, 17 billion books on this stuff. I have been drawn to his way of describing what a brand is because I think it makes a lot more sense to me as a creative professional. And the way that he describes it, I'm not going to try to like pretend that I'm the person that came up with this. The way he describes it is that, the brand is not your logo. The logo is a tool that the brand can use, but it's not the brand itself. It's not a product or a service. Even if people are talking about buying this brand or that brand, the product is not the brand. The brand is the customer's gut feeling about you, right? You could say reputation is kind of a similar concept, but really the difference is every customer is going to have a different idea of what your brand is. Everybody's going to have a different perception of you, right? So I like, as an example, like, you've known me for a couple of years now. You have a good idea of, who I am, what I'm all about, what I like, what it's like to have a conversation with me, like how, if I say something really snarky and sarcastic, like, how I mean it, right?
I do.
Whereas somebody listening to this podcast and hearing my stupid voice for the first time might not know that, and they're going to have a different perception of it. So even though it's still the same conversation, the same exact, the same thing being said, the same video being watched, whatever, the context that leads up to that moment is going to shape their perception of me, of you, of whoever we're talking about.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why branding is so important, because people will have those gut feelings about you, whether you want them to or not, whether you try to get one from them or not. So that's kind of the dangerous part, is when you don't pay attention to how you're being seen or how you're presenting yourself. Then the dangerous part is that you have no control over how they feel about you, right? And not that you ever will have full control, but if you are a very prolific engineer, producer, artist, and nobody knows it outside of your circle, there's nothing for them. There's no way for them to know how good you are. There's no way to know what your personality is like. There's no way to know, what the experience of working with you is going to be.
Yeah.
Are you trustworthy? Do you kind of check all the boxes that I'm looking for in a mixing engineer?
Yeah.
If I have no information other than your Discogs page or whatever, I'm guessing, right? And like our clients and ourselves, we have way too much just generalized anxiety to want to have to guess when it comes to trusting somebody with our art.
True. Question for you.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you that everybody kind of has their own view of what your brand might be. Do you think that it's crucial that every person has the same opinion? Is that the goal here? Or is that the opinion that each person generates, at least in the, vein of what you want it to be?
I think it's less about trying to have a unified perception of you.
Yeah.
I think what's more important is that the people that I want to work with, the people that I really feel like I'm going to find the most joy in working with, it's just important that they have a good, a good brand of me. It's kind of a weird way to say it, but I want them to have a good gut feeling about me. And to kind of like, as an example, like the clients that I don't want to work with, the kinds of artists that I feel like I would not get in the zone with, I don't want them to have a good. Oh, that's kind of weird to say. Let me rephrase that. Okay, hold on. Bear with me here. The example that I like to use is that as a mixing engineer, I love being very collaborative with the artists. I love chasing after happy accidents and crazy ideas, even if they're not explicitly a mixing thing or a decision or part of the process that is typically categorized as mixing. And I have a conversation with my clients before we start anything, before I ever even agree to take on a project, just to make sure that if I hear something that I think is going to make the song better, I want to make sure that I'm allowed to try it. They're always allowed to veto it. They're always allowed to say, no, I don't like that as much. Let's go back to the other way. But there are artists that want to have an engineer that, just comes in, just takes what's there and just rebalances it and makes it sound polished. And they don't want any kind of outside input into the creative process. And that's awesome. That's totally cool, but those are not the kind of artists that I get the most fulfillment out of working with personally. Sorry, I guess the mailman is here. But I just don't get the same kind of enjoyment out of that. So I want to make sure that my branding, the things that I'm doing to try to shape those gut feelings, I want it to be very, very clear that I love the collaborative process and that I love to be weird and, be snarky sonically as well, do weird fun stuff with the audio. Because the clients that don't want that don't want that input, I want them to be turned off. I want them to filter themselves out.
Yeah.
And that's what strong branding does. It doesn't just attract the kind of clients that you do want, but it repels the kind of clients that you don't want.
That's interesting because, the average, we'll use audio engineers, mixers, and engineers because I just feel like we really are guilty of this. We'll do anything. You're just like every gig, just yes, 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 yes. And you and I have talked about this, and I've talked about this with other people. Like, eventually, you just can't do that anymore. So I think for a lot of people that are starting out, the idea of doing something to represent yourself out in the world that's going to result in less people calling you sounds so counterintuitive, particularly in the first 10 years of an audio engineering career.
The misconception, I believe, that a lot of engineers have and producers have is that because they're turning away work, therefore they're going to be less, they're going to be able to find less clients.
Yes.
Right.
There's like a FOMO. There's like, if I don't do this record, FOMO. I might not get the Grammy that record gets, even though the chances of that record getting a Grammy are, very low. The chance of
that record getting, more than the less than 1,000 streams, on Spotify is pretty low, realistically.
It's true.
But I think what I try to remind myself when I was making the switch into really trying to be more focused, it's that there are over 20 million songs per year coming out. And that's just on Spotify. And the number's going up every year, right? Just because only a small number of the clients that I've worked with are what I would consider my ideal clients, or they are a small amount of the services that I provided, or the, like maybe maybe I really just love mixing, but I've only done a handful of mixing projects total. And I don't want to turn down other stuff because I really want to just take whatever money I can get. Just because I've only so far had X amount of mixing projects doesn't mean that that's all that is available out in the world, right? And
Yeah.
the people that want, this is going to probably ruffle some feathers, I think, but the kinds of clients that want a generalist and they want someone to be a one-stop shop are generally the kind of clients that want wholesale pricing. And the clients that really care and they really want the best product, they want the specialists.
I agree. And they're also the generalists. They are fickle, and they most likely, my experience is that they won't return. Whether you deliver 110% or 10%, it doesn't matter. They're moving on to the next thing, because they're also the types of people that associate the success of their song to everybody that was involved. Okay, didn't do well. Mixer, no more. That studio, not again. Mastering, no, because it's not their fault, obviously. Yeah. But yeah, I agree with that completely.
And I think the same can be said about when people worry about when they have a hesitation towards delegating as well, or narrowing down, whether it's narrowing down the styles of music that they work on or the genres of music that they work on, or it's narrowing down the part of the process that they are involved in, whether it's going from doing full productions down to just mixing and mastering, or going from mixing and mastering down to just mastering, or just doing session drumming, whatever that is. There's this fear that, there's only X amount of artists that want to hire me right now, and therefore that proportion is always going to be the same. There's only ever going to be that many people that want to hire me. But the thing is, when you start to really narrow down your focus, and not just narrowing down what you do, but narrowing down how you present yourself and what you present yourself as doing, you'll realize that there are a lot more clients that are looking for a specialist. And also, because they're hiring a specialist, they're willing to spend the money for a specialist.
Yeah.
Like I find a lot of value. An example I use in the course. Okay. Like I go to Starbucks pretty much every morning because I value the experience of, getting my uncooperative daughter out the door to school, dropping her off, swinging by the drive-through on the way to the studio. It's like a mental refresh for me. Usually, like past couple of weeks, what I've been doing is I'll get my cold brew and then I'll park in the parking lot and I'll film my TikTok or reel for the day just in my car. And that's become a bit of like a palate cleanser for me every morning, kind of getting me into that space. And could I make cold brew at home for cheaper? Yeah, of course. But to me, it's not just the cold brew itself. It's that whole experience that I'm having. And the cold brew is just kind of the conduit for that experience.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, my in-laws would never spend, more than 99 cents at a gas station for for coffee, but they will have every cable TV channel known to man and every streaming service, because having all of that at their fingertips is valuable to them. That's very important to them. And whereas my wife and I, we watch like the ball drop on New Year's Eve and sometimes the Super Bowl if we feel like it, but usually we're at somebody else's house anyway. So like we just have a couple streaming services that like our daughter likes and that we watch, and we don't even watch TV, like regular TV, other than New Year's Eve and maybe the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
So we would never find value in, I don't know, like $400 in, a cable bill, but my in-laws absolutely do. And they scoff when I talk about, my cold brew being $5, right? Because it's all about context and perspective, and knowing who your target audience is, and making yourself seem obvious as the option to them.
Yeah.
And when you're a generalist, it's a lot harder to find those people that value the experience, because they're looking for the price. They're deciding based on price. They're not deciding based on experience.
There's a lot in there I want to unpack, and I didn't take as many notes as I should have. But
I just rambled, so that was my bad.
No, it's good. I want to go back. Let's throw me under the bus a little bit. So you were talking about the quote that you used in the course, which I watched a pre-release of. Your brand isn't what you say it is, it's what they say it is, which is basically what you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
What do you think the best way for someone to identify what other people think of them? Like if I were to ask you what my brand is, what do you think it is? I'm curious to see if it aligns with what I imagine it is. Do you know what I mean? I'm putting you on the spot here. You have to like make some shit up about me. You're sorry.
You're putting yourself on the spot.
Well, I can take it. I can also edit this, so it's fine.
Okay. So in this part of the video, I'll just move my mouth, and you'll just
we'll get Lego
AI
Carl in here for this.
Get Lego Carl in here to say nothing but wonderful things. Well, you know what? Let's do this. Let's do a little brand audit.
Oh God. Okay.
Live. Okay.
All right, let's do it.
So let's do this.
I brought water. Should I have brought a beer?
No, I'm not going to say no. So let's do this first. Share screen, Google. All right. Can you see that?
Oh, the website. I haven't been over here in a second.
Well, that says something, doesn't it?
So to save us all the misery of listening to Carl read things off my webpage and sit through long pauses, I've opted to clip this segment out. But fill you in, things did not go so well. Carl found some leftover lorem ipsum filler text in my contact form, and we all learned that I had apparently inserted podcast reviews into the footer of every page on my site. So all in all, it's probably best that you guys missed it. Yeah, and I want to defend, well, I don't want to defend it. I want to completely agree with you, because ever since we hung out last time and I've met so many people on the podcast, and like I think about the brand of the podcast and how that works. Obviously more so than I think about my own brand as an engineer mixer. I see in the last couple of years, I've started to notice that people don't really seem to care about the homepage of my website anymore, which is like basically the main page of countless engineers who are far more successful than me, right? It's all just album covers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And credits don't seem to connect with people the way that they used to. I think because the internet allows you to get to know people. And I'm assuming you would agree with that. I feel like people are now being drawn to a lot of what you teach and what you execute, which is, putting your personality out there for people to connect to. And then they can go and see, oh, this guy does dope records too. But I was going to work with him before I saw these names. As opposed to 15 years ago, it was like, what are your credits? Cool. Here's my money.
Exactly. And the kind of like the example that I use to explain this to some of the more, what's a nice way of saying old heads, like people that have been in it for a much longer time. The whole, the personality side of it is a lot more familiar to them in the context of touring musicians. Right. So one thing I learned in the beginning of my career, I started my career out as a session drummer and touring drummer. And one of the things that I learned very early on was that at any given time, there are 1,000 drummers that could play the songs as well as me or better than me. But if I can be the one that they want to have in the van with them for 6 weeks, I'm going to get the gig.
Yeah.
So that idea, that concept is nothing new. It's just something new to the audio side, because before, having the ability to create really top level, end results, if you want to base things based on the results, it was a lot more difficult and exponentially more expensive to get those results 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But now, like, you can, it's so, it's so overstated by this point in 2023 that you could have a hit record in your bedroom. Like you could have a hit record in the trunk of a car, and you could probably at this point like record a hit record on like the ATM touchscreen somewhere. So that like the end result is no longer the thing that sets you apart.
That's true.
It's the journey of getting there. It's not the destination. It's the journey of getting there. And that's when it comes to finding the people that really, or getting people to find value in Travis, right? They will find value in the journey of the music making process of making it with you. The end result isn't always the top priority, because I'm sure you've heard stories where, the end result, like the mix sounded great, but they were a pain in the ass to work with, and they were always late on delivery, or they always hassled. It made them feel like belittled for wanting to give revision notes or whatever. Like there's all sorts of just awful ways that engineers and producers have treated clients in the past. And all of a sudden it went from artists having to deal with that because getting the quality level was worth putting up with the bullshit. And now it's like, oh no, they don't have to put up with the bullshit anymore.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So that's what I would say. So your thought of, or the comment you made about making the personality much more prominent and public facing, as opposed to being something that somebody only learns when they've already hired you and they're in the room with you.
Yeah.
It's a very different approach, and I think the world's better off for it, personally.
Yeah, well, I think more people are probably working with people they connect with as opposed to working with who the label assigned,
Yeah. And especially with being able to work remotely now and collaborating remotely, that the number of people that you could connect with personally is no longer just a small fraction of the number of local artists that are within, an hour drive and willing to work with you.
Yeah.
Now it's like, okay, the entire population of the world is your the big pool of people, and you can be picky. You can, be picky not just about the music. You can be picky about the music too, but being picky with the kind of experience that not only you want to give to the clients, but also the kind of experience that you want to have as the service provider. You can make decisions based on the kind of quality of life you want to have, not just who's going to, be willing to pay the rate.
Yeah.
Or the people that find the most value in your creative decision-making and your perspectives, they're also the ones that are going to be the ones that are willing to pay for it. So the people that want to pay you the most money and are willing to pay you the most money, more often than not, are the ones that, really value your input.
Yeah.
And there is that kind of, meme trope, whatever, of like, the $50 client versus a $5,000 client mixed notes. And to a degree, that's a bit exaggerated, but I think there is some truth to it in the sense that the people that actually value your input into it are going to be the ones that are willing to pay it. And the ones that are less concerned about your input and more concerned about their own budget, probably going to be a pain in the ass, because the budget is their priority, not the song. The budget is the priority, not their experience.
Yeah, that was really well put. That's one of the best ways I've seen that laid out, because it's totally true. The people that the higher paying gigs are usually the ones that go down easier. And I've always just, I agree with that meme, but I never thought about that angle that you just presented, which is the fact that the people that are willing to pay more care more about working with you than the other people. The other people are just trying to hit a number. We need to get this done for $250. You know?
And I think that meme is often used as a way to try to go on a forum and shit on clients that don't want to pay money. But it's really, if you're not conveying the value that, if you're not taking charge of, their perception, their customer perceived value, of which we'll talk about in a second, of your service, then it's on you for having clients only willing to pay $50. That's not their fault. That's your fault.
I'm thinking about my experiences just like buying more and more things off of Amazon over the last few years. And I've hit this point now where like there is so much garbage coming in the mail that I now I think, okay, this is something that I want to pay very little money for. And then this is something that I want to be good and not break and function and, be solid. And I don't go to the lowest bidder, which is the internet, obviously.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny. All these things are like inside of you, but you never think about them in the perspective of your career or what you're doing. It's always, even though you're doing the same thing that other quote consumers are doing to you.
Yeah.
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 It's a good flip.
You have preferences. You have like whether it's, a preference of what sandwich you're going to get at a particular restaurant, or your preference of what gas station you like to go to. You have these preferences, whether you're consciously making them or not. And your potential clients are looking at you in the exact same way.
It's true. You were going to talk about something.
Customer perceived value.
Yes. Can you define and lay that out for people?
That's essentially going back to the example I used with the Starbucks cold brew experience compared to the cable channels experience, where I find more value. I have a higher perceived value of, I guess maybe that's not the right way to word it. I perceive a higher value to that cold brew than my in-laws do. And my in-laws have a higher perceived value of the TV stations than I do, right? So much like your brand, where all of your customers, the potential clients and customers are going to have their own gut feeling, their own personal interpretation of your reputation, right? The same thing is going to be with the value of it. Some people are going to find a lot of value in the things that I do, and some people are not. And the example earlier when I said about how I love working with clients that enable me to chase after crazy ideas in their song, even if I'm just hired to mix it, but there's something in the production I think could be cool, like adding something in here or whatever. Those clients that also want that experience, and they have that specific openness to that kind of process, they find a lot of value in that, because not a lot of people are willing to do that, and or at least not a lot of people are outwardly expressing that they want to do this, right? And the people that don't want that, they just want somebody to take the files and just, essentially stem master it, for lack of a better way to describe it. Stem mastering with like 70 tracks, or doing that to it. They don't find that same value in what it is that I do. So they're not going to be willing to pay, my full rate. Whereas the people that do find the value in that will see my full rate as a steal.
Yeah, totally.
And just because I provide a service doesn't mean that every client is going to value that service or that perspective. Just because I can, program drums like a monster because I spent my, early years as a session drummer and I'm a super dork for that stuff. Not everybody needs that. So if I just like charge somebody as if I'm going to do that and they don't want that, of course they're not going to pay for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's if you think of it that way, you're like, oh yeah, well, of course, like I don't need you to, you shouldn't be charging me to like edit my drums when there are no drums in the song. Of course, like that is obvious and makes sense. What I'm talking about is just kind of like the perspective and tastes and experiences and like the personal, the personality equivalent to that.
Yeah.
Where there are things about me that some people are going to really need on their team, like indispensable. And there's some people that could care less and they don't want anything to do with me. And that's awesome, because the more people I can find that don't want me on their team, the more confident I'll be able to know or the more confident I'll be able to be when I'm trying to find those people that really do. Because the ones that really do want me on their team, like there is no other option.
Yeah.
That's to me what I think the course really drives at, is trying to find those clients.
I would agree with that. Yeah. Everything that I've watched and read in the past when you were giving the PDF out to people, I agree with that completely. I want to ask you a couple questions, but one, when was there something that happened in your life or a realization that you had where you kind of came to all these conclusions? Were you ever the say yes to everything at any price?
Oh yeah.
Person? What made you become this person?
I think at first I stumbled into it by being selfish. I don't know how else to say that. I just started, with the example of mixing like pop and pop adjacent stuff. I just really loved doing it, and I started doing some of it, doing sessions here and there, doing some like projects here and there, and I just became obsessed. And I just was like, I feel differently when I do this. This feels qualitatively different than when I'm, producing some acoustic singer-songwriter track. Like, I'm getting paid to do both, but this is giving me a very different personal, emotional reaction. I want to do more of that, So it was like chasing, in a way, I started out by me just like kind of chasing that high in a weird way. But then what made me really double down on it and try to figure out not just what initially drove me to do that, but kind of what's going on under the hood, so I can be more conscious and intentional about it, was really 2020, when, a lot of my friends and peers were really, really struggling to find projects, and I was having my best year ever. And then 2021, ended up being even better than that. Like I think I mixed like something like 309 songs in 2020, something like that. And thank you. But it was like, the real moment of when I kind of realized it was really the summer of 2021, when I was just trying to figure out like what was going on. Like, why is this working for me?
Yeah.
Why am I growing when everybody else is really struggling? Because I know it's not because I'm a better mixer. Like that's for sure. Like I know I'm not just like somehow the only good mixer in the world, and that's why people are hiring me, because that's very obviously not the case, And I just tried to, through process of elimination, and a lot of, thinking about it, a lot of long walks, a lot of late sleepless nights trying to figure out, what this was. And I just realized that it was the fact that I had been so focused on finding people making music that I really love. And also once I had that realization that there were so many people making music, then I was able to be picky about the kinds of people that I wanted to work with. I just realized, the more particular I am and the more focused I am, the better the results are. And so the better the music turns out, the happier I am, the less burnout I am, the more money they're willing to pay me because they really like the results. And then the more songs that I have out, the more they're sharing it. And the more they're sharing it, the more people that they're friends with, who are probably also very similar to them in, temperament, are finding me and reaching out to me. And all of a sudden I was like, holy shit, this is it. It's just the more that I focus from the floodlight to the laser beam, the more of an impact I'm making. And I'm realizing that so many people are, for whatever reason, really resonating with whatever it is that I'm doing. And that's when I started the initial beginnings of this course, because I was trying to put these self-discoveries, into words, not just partially for myself, but also as a way for me to help my friends to try to get out of that COVID slump. Like, hey, this is what I was doing. Here are some practical ways I think that you could try it, that you can adapt to your personality and your ideal clients. But here are some like kind of foundational things that I think can help. And that went from a, you know, a notes app jarbled mess to a little 7-page PDF to a 15-page PDF to a 50-page PDF to a 130-page PDF to a, 3-hour video course. And that was the thing is I said this in the beginning that it took me 2 years because I wanted to disprove these things, right? I didn't want to just make an assumption and close my eyes and hope that it was right. Like I wanted to find out if this works or not. And from helping my friends and my peers and eventually into, mentoring people and coaching people through this process, I realized, oh no, this works. Like that's it. And the people that have a grasp of how to shape those gut feelings for their potential clients, whether or not they call it branding, whether or not they are even conscious that they're doing it, but they're actively making sure that people have the gut feeling about them that they want those people to have. They're the ones that are crushing it. And the people that may be, 5 times better at whatever the particular service is, they're struggling to get clients because nobody knows that they exist. Nobody knows what their personality is like. They don't know what the experience is like to work with them. Because if I'm going to say, let's say you and I both send a quote to a client, the same client. Let's say that you and I are up against each other, right? And they don't know who's who, and the price is exactly the same. And you just tell them the price and that's it. And I tell them the same price, but I let them know like what the process is going to be like, not the logistical process of, well, I'll send you an invoice, but like, oh no, like at first thing I want to do is I want you to send me some references because I want to get an idea of what you're looking for, but I'd love it for you to send me a couple sentences about each reference. So that way I can understand why you're being drawn to these songs. And what I'll do is I'll probably send you a couple references of my own that I'm connecting with when I hear the demo, that it's kind of pulling me in that direction. And I want to see if we're on the same wavelengths, kind of see where we're at, go on from there. And just like that alone, they're going to hire me.
Yeah. I mean, I would.
And even if you did the exact same process, even if you had the same process, the same deliverables, you had the same revision limit or no limit, whatever. But if they don't know it, they don't know it. If you don't tell them, they don't know it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big key that I want anyone to take away from this is that it's so much easier to get a happy client to come back for a second song than it is to get someone to hire you for the first time, right? Because after that first song, they've worked with you, they've had that experience, they know what to expect. You've built that trust with them. Strong branding helps you to build that trust, give them that expectation, let them know what they're getting themselves into before they hire you for the first time.
Yeah.
And the difference is, if they weren't aware of it before they hired you the first time, your price has to be lower, right? Because you need to convince them to hire you. Like they're taking a chance. They're taking a risk, right? But it's a lot easier to get to give a higher quote to a first time client that already believes you're the only answer to their problem than it is to have somebody that you started with at an intro rate. Then they realized, oh no, you are an indispensable part of my team, but because you set that expectation at the lower rate, now you're kind of more or less stuck there.
Yeah.
And not that this is about always making more money, and not that this is always about, trying to squeeze every nickel out of somebody, but back to the quality of life thing. Like if people are willing to pay for it and they find the value in that and they're happy to spend $400 on a cable subscription, whatever it is, they're happy. And that's going to make you a lot less stressed out about finding, like how you're going to pay your mortgage next month, how you're going to feed your kids, and you can do better work and you can be just generally happier, and you'll probably get the stuff done faster and be able to do more projects because you're enjoying it and you're drawn to it.
Yeah. 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 Like I've said so many times, every time you pause, I'm in total agreement. I've found, you know, the last few years, the more you put yourself out there, because I mean, I think as we're having this conversation, my website reflects my old mindset. And I think my social media is a little bit more of my new mindset. But the more you put that stuff out there, you find people that connect with those things, whether they're podcast concepts or guests that come on this show or artists that want to work with me. The more you put it out there, the more your circle grows of people that are like-minded, which I think is kind of really what you're getting at.
But that can be dangerous because if you're putting out the wrong, if you're attracting the wrong kind of people, and then you start growing that circle.
That's true as well. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I would say a practical example would be if I could make mix tutorials until I'm blue in the face.
Right.
Because I would enjoy, I'm a mix engineer. So like, yeah, I'm going to geek out about this stuff. But I could very easily just like make a bunch of mix tutorials. And that's going to be fantastic if my goal is to get mixing students. If I'm trying to get artist clients, then the way that I talk about those things and the way that I frame it needs to be very different if I want to attract artists versus if I want to attract other producers and engineers.
Yeah.
Or if I want to attract, you know, artists who have their shit together versus artists who are total beginners and just starting out. And there's no objective right or wrong, right?
Yeah.
But you are, like you said, like you are going to grow that circle the more that you put yourself out there. But unless you're putting yourself out there in the way that that is intentional and thoughtful, you could very quickly fall into the trap of making meme videos and tutorials that are going to get a lot of likes and a lot of plays, but don't bring you any meaningful career growth in the direction that you want to go.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I don't have a ton of followers. And I don't care. Like, I don't have a ton of views. I don't care because the ones that do follow me and the ones that do engage with it, like, I'm doing okay. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's because it's very targeted, and I would rather have rather have 100 people see a video that I made, and that gets 5 new people to get into my circle and become aware of me and start deep diving into my other videos because they found so much value in it. I'd rather have that than a video that gets 100,000 views and it's just like random high school kids just scrolling in English class and just like liking stuff because they have nothing else to do. And it has it doesn't bring anything meaningful for me, and it doesn't bring anything meaningful for them.
Yeah, agreed. I think we talked about this the last time you were on the show, understanding who you're making your content for. And I think it was Chris Graham and Brian Hood on Six Figure Home Studio. One of them said something along the lines of like, it was probably Chris, because it sounds like a Chris thing. If you're a mastering engineer, you don't want to tell people how to master records. You want to help people finish mixes so that you can, it's like going downstream one. It's like, okay, so if you're a tracking engineer, how can you help people finish writing songs? But yeah, I think, you do have to be conscious. Well, it's what this whole conversation's been about, is being conscious of your brand is essentially what we're going at, because that's what's going to grow your circle. So,
and not just your brand, but like what's, the other term I didn't use was your brand identity. Okay. So if your brand is the gut feeling that people have about you, and branding is, the proactive effort that you're putting into trying to shape that, your brand identity is the gut feeling that you want them to have. So you not only need to understand who your ideal clients are, but also what your ideal perception of you is. And it's not about changing who you are. It's not about, it's about changing and being thoughtful about how you present it, not just, I'm not saying change who you are, go get Botox, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, that is not the point. It's like, what are the quirky bits about me that my ideal clients are going to resonate with? Are my ideal clients snarky too, and think that it's hilarious when I make stop motion animated Lego minifigures dance in the music videos for songs I've worked on? Yeah, mine are, so I'm gonna do that, and if they see those videos and they're like, this guy is an idiot, what is he doing, then clearly we weren't going to get along in the first place.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Oh, I did want to say before we continue the last questions, there's so many things that Carl has touched on or like glanced over, used a lot of terms. They all come up in the course. There's really great concepts in there. Something that I wanted to talk about, which we don't have time to talk about unless Carl can summarize it in like 2 minutes, is the 3 types of niche: genre niche, service niche, and personality niche. And I think the idea of the service niche and personality niche are very unique to Carl's concepts, because I didn't think about those things until he brought them up. And I was like, fuck, that's great. Can you do that in 2 minutes?
I can, yes. So first off, I will say that apparently you can pronounce it niche or niche or niche. All 3 are acceptable. So when I say niche, it's not because I'm trying to like passive aggressively correct you on your own podcast. So okay, your service niche are going to be the people that find the most value in the particular service that you're providing. So let's say it's mixing, or it's mastering, or it's film scoring, whatever it is that you do. Okay. And a lot of people, when they think of niche, they're thinking of genre niche, which is another little circle in the Venn diagram. And that is, I think, how people more commonly describe different styles of music, right? So when they think of, niching down, they're thinking of mostly rock music or just electronic and dance. But a slight offshoot of that, which I use in the course, is style niche, which is for all of the listeners who are thinking, well, I like all kinds of music, because a lot of us do feel that way. But I would argue that there are going to be underlying characteristics that you tend to be drawn to that may not be specific to a genre. For myself, I say that I love big, prominent, articulate vocals. I love massive rhythm sections, and I love lots of weird little nuances and textures that nobody notices till the 10th time they listen. So some pop music has those characteristics. Some doesn't. Some metal has it and some doesn't. Some country does, some country doesn't. So it's not specific to the genre, but there are underlying characteristics that really, I feel, are like what draw me into the kind of music that I like. So if I want to listen to Lorna Shore and Skrillex and Chick 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 all back to back, like there are these like underlying things that draw me in, even though those are stylistically very different from one another. And then personality niche are the artists that you've worked with, or like if you think about the artists you've worked with and the ones that you actually like really see eye to eye on things about. So whether that's creatively or just like the way that they communicate, just the general vibe. There's artists you've worked with that are just, you love being in the room with them. And then there are artists that you loathe, or at least like you just cannot wait for the session to be over. Right.
Yeah.
So your ideal clients are going to be in the center of the Venn diagram, right? They're going to fall into your service niche. They're going to, like, for you, they're going to want great pop mixing, or they're going to want great mixing, right? The genre niche or style niche, it's going to be kind of pop and pop adjacent, clear, big, exciting, emotional styles. And they're going to be the kinds of people that you just really get along with. And your ideal clients kind of check all of those boxes.
Amazing. Awesome. Obviously more in depth in the course, but yeah, man, I enjoyed watching the videos. I appreciate you sharing it with me over the years as it's progressed. So, and before
it's as it progressed.
Oh, I see what you did there.
I'm sure no one's ever made that stupid dad joke on the podcast.
Actually, no, 90 some episodes in, and that's the first time. Yeah. Wow. Well, actually, we should probably check your episode last time, because if it happened there.
That's a very accurate observation there, my friend.
But before we go, for editing purposes, I just need you to say, wow, Travis, this website is perfect. No notes. Next question.
Wow, Travis, this website is perfect. No notes. Next question, please.
Amazing. Okay, so you know where we're going from here. It's the traditional closing here. And you answered this last time, but maybe you have a different opinion. Have you chosen to redefine what success meant to you since last time we talked, or would you like to refresh that concept for anybody?
I don't remember what I said last time.
I think last time you said you...
Don't tell me. Don't tell me. I don't want to know. I don't want that to influence me.
Got it.
Because then it might have changed more than it did, or it might have changed more than I realized, which I think would be more interesting. Success for me is the amount of people that I can help change. And I don't mean that just directly, like how many, people buy the course or how many people hire me for coaching or whatever, but it's like if I can help if one person watches one of my, TikToks and that is a eureka moment for them and it helps them to find better connections with the client, and that leads to a more natural creative process that ends up becoming a more emotionally impactful song that helps somebody else out. That one TikTok then helped 5,000-6,000 of people, right?
Yep.
To me, that's the success. It's not about the money or about even like the vanity metrics of how many followers do I have or how many downloads does this episode get. It's about, the intangible impact that I will never be able to measure or understand.
Amazing. That was not what you said last time. But, and if anybody wants to know what he said last time, you can go back to the last episode. I did want to say that, I think it's the episode that's going to come out right before this or 2 episodes before. Change really happens like one person at a time. So I think that that's like a noble goal, is to help singular people. And then those people can then go forward and help one more singular person and blah, blah, blah. That's how change actually happens. Before you got to go, what is your current biggest goal that you can share with us? What's the next small step to take?
Survive the next few days and just have the baby.
That is a fair goal.
That's it.
That's
just survive the next couple of days until the birth of our second child. That's all I can do right now.
So happy for you, dude. It's going to be an exciting, exhausting time for you. Super stoked.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to, I'm looking forward to the exhaustion being from a human instead of from my own unstoppable anxiety.
Amazing. Tell people where they could find you, and if they want to connect, whatever you want to pitch, go for it.
Honestly, I say come to Instagram, either at Carl Bahner or at Bahner Branding, just because that's the easiest way to just, send me a message. Let's talk. I like meeting people. I like having conversations.
Awesome.
If you couldn't gather that from this conversation here, I like talking to people. So yeah, come say hi.
Amazing. Well, Carl, thank you, man. It's always a pleasure hanging out. Let me, text me a baby picture when it happens, when you come out the other side of it.
Awesome. Appreciate you so much. Thanks for having me on.
Yes. Talk to you soon.